Welcome back, friends. It's another episode of The Mindful CEO. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, here with our other co-host, Aaron. Aaron
Nailed
T.
it.
Hen. Do you have a middle initial? What's your middle initial?
A. My
Is
initial
it P?
spell
Oh,
which is one of my favorite things.
Aaron A. Hendon. All right, fair enough. Welcome, Aaron, and I'll let you introduce our guest.
Fabulous, Chris. Thanks. What's your middle name?
I don't have a middle name.
Oh, Marcel, you do have a middle name. It's right there on the screen. Marcel Andersen, Hoepgen.
So that's a double last name. So
well, whatever. You have three names.
Enough to write already,
Okay, fine.
So my middle initial is S, but I can't tell you the name.
You can't say the name?
Oh, I can't disclose my middle name. Just my initial is S.
Excellent. All right, good.
It's
a little mystery. It's an open loop. They're now going to have to listen to the whole episode to see if that gets resolved. Well, Marcel is a friend of mine from another program that we are doing together to amplify our voices and our messages and to get engaged, meet other like-minded people that are in the same making a difference in the same space and seeing what we can contribute to them. And that's what Marcel, when I found out what Marcel does, I thought, well, he would be an enormous contribution to this space. And I will let Marcel go through what he does and how he does it and introduce himself. And then we'll see where that conversation goes. So Marcel, really welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys having me here and spending some time with me. And I'm looking forward to our discussion here. So my background is quite diverse. I started off as a musician, studied classical music for a long time, and then became a performer and played concerts all over Europe. My main instrument was classical guitar and opera. So I sang for a while and played for a while, and that was always my dream. But then I never spent time at home. So at some point when I reached like my top of my career, I just figured out, this is really great, but I didn't think that through, right? I cannot have a family like that. So that stress came to me and made my body tight and whatnot. So I started deepening my practice of yoga and meditation to counter that a little bit. And then step by step, that took over, just like engulfed me so much and fascinated me so much that I didn't want to practice guitar anymore. I just wanted to practice yoga and meditation. And eventually they swapped positions. And now it was yoga and meditation that became my passion and my job. And I started teaching and very quickly started teaching people to become yoga teachers. So to teacher trainings and stuff like that. And from that work, a lot of my students came to me and asked for more one-on-one counseling and guidance, right? Because once you start really working with that system of yoga, it just moves so much in you that you feel like, hey, there's so much to explore and I want that. You can't do that in a regular class. So from that work with my students, this kind of coaching, I developed a system, which I call systematic contentment. And that is my coaching system where I show you what you can do to really make your life happy and content so that you're not dependent on external factors to bring that to you, but you can actually do actionable steps to get there.
That's awesome. I love that. But so, I mean, who's saying no to that? Who's like, I'm up to here with contentment. I'm
right.
I got any more contentment, I would just be dead.
I know. See, for me, when it comes to coaching, I find a lot of times people want to get coaching because they are discontented, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, let's try to work on a problem. And I don't like doing that. I like to work on something what you already feel good about and you want more of it. You want to accelerate that process so it just washes out all the things that you don't like.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. And is that the first step in the process, is the focusing on what's good?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing that. Yeah, I don't like to deal with the things that I don't like, right? They're annoying enough once they're there, so I don't want to give that any focus. So I focus on the things that are good, and then, like I said, crank it up step by step.
That's very Abraham, Aaron. That's very like grab the right end of the stick, like focus on things you like, and you'll have more of that. And on that.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very law of attraction. Do you do anything with do you play around with the law of attraction? You're interested in how woo-woo do you get? Where are you on the woo-woo scale of things?
I explored all of those woo things and whatever, but at some point I found for myself that a more I don't want to say scientific, but more like a step-by-step approach works better for me. You know, like my whole life, I've always been looking for teachers who can really show me a step-by-step process. And I was so good at looking for them that I never found them. So I had to figure out my own step-by-step system for that. And then this whole woo-woo thing at some point is just not actionable enough for me.
Nice. It's good. I think that would be a good question for our guests, Chris, as we get more guests, is we should have the scale, like a big scale of woo-woo, right? Like, where are you on the woo-woo scale? Like, you know, it's funny because as I've been interviewing people for guests, that comes up because, you know, we get, you know, you're a yoga teacher. That's far more woo-woo than, you know, the Western standard Western range of woo-woo. That's already considered woo-woo, but you're like, no, I'm not woo. That's over there with law of attraction. So, I mean, we have people coming on that paint stones and as energy stones. That's right. But, you know, I have a very good friend who's a PhD neuroscientist who's also out studying the studying fairies and the whole fairy world. Okay. She's a PhD neuroscientist studying fairy world. Okay. See, it's all, you know, it's all possible. It's look, whatever floats your boat. So I was just curious.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, for me, I think that's one of the big misconceptions about yoga, that yoga is woo-woo, you know, but yoga is really a science that shows you step by step on what to do. And by that, you never get into those woo-woo parts if you really practice it correctly.
Interesting. And when you say, well, okay, so in you would anyone, I think, in their that's the argument that anyone would make about their discipline is that it's not woo-woo. You know, I think that I definitely don't think Esther Hicks would consider what she does woo-woo. I think she considers it science. I think it's only from so woo-woo is in that way to label something woo-woo. I'm just noticing that to label something woo-woo is, I don't know that it's denigrating, but it's certainly labeling, right? It's obviously labeling something, and it's you know, is it something to be defensive about or something to you know, because I don't think yoga's woo-woo. I don't, but you know, I don't think Reiki is woo-woo.
Right. So it's
you
just
know, or
that
homeopathy.
the normal 9-to-5 box, right?
Right. I mean, if it's
And
outside, right. So where is it on the scale? Because really, when that's the thing that gets me when people say, "Oh no, law of attraction's too woo-woo." I'm like, okay, well, where on the scale are you for woo-woo? Like, do you think acupuncture is woo-woo? Because the Western medicine thinks acupuncture is woo-woo, right? That's not homeopathy. Is that woo-woo? Is nature herbology, reflexology? Where in those is Reiki? Is that woo-woo? Like, so you got to, there's a spectrum, and you fall on the yoga. That's your science. Great. But there's a whole world of people that would look at that and go, no. I mean, you know, you just said it's like yoga's for people in you know, in Lululemon. That's a whole, it's also got a hipster connotation. There's a hipster scale too, actually, that we should manage. And then the Venn diagram between what's hipster and what's woo-woo. All right, but we got it. I just think it's something to be when we do labeling meditations with my group. It shows up like we label things and then pretend what we label them is a description of reality and not a function of our having said that. We abdicate responsibility for the labels we give things almost immediately upon giving them. And we do that with our self-judgments, I think, you know, when we say, oh, I'm a piece of shit. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. We pretend we're describing something versus actively causing ourselves to be responsible for the label we're giving it. And I just think it's funny. It comes up with woo-woo. Anything about that, Marcel? Chris, did you ever thought about that?
I was curious of Marcel's thought.
Oh yeah.
What came up for you, Marcel? if anything?
Yeah, I think if we agree on calling woo-woo everything that is out of the normal Western box, then it fits the description for what I do, absolutely.
Right.
But if it, I don't know, for me, if there's actionable steps that can absolutely show results by, for me, I like to track data for these kind of things. And if you put a certain work in and it shows the same results, then I cannot consider it being woo-woo. Well, it's
Yeah,
not
very
like
good.
fluffy. It is
Good.
something
All
that
right. So
is
then,
scientific to me. Yeah, you do this, it's like an equation. You do this and you do that, and the result will be this. And you do that 50 times and it's the same thing. And you let somebody else do it and it's the same result, then I think there's more to it than just saying, oh, it's somewhere out in the clouds. Right? That's something, there's a
I'm curious
clear
though.
action and effect.
I'm curious, Marcel, because I in the green room before recording, just you had talked about some of the spiritual coaching that you do. And there's an interesting blending of worlds. There's a very systematic contentment. There's steps, do it 50 times, produce a result. And then there's how do you reconcile the spiritual conversation of things with people where that might not be measurable, or maybe it is measurable to you. I don't know.
I think it is measurable quite a lot. When we speak about spirituality, I think everybody kind of like has the same desire, which is coming to a point where you feel content, just to write on that word for a little bit more. And whatever contentment means to you, that is personal, right? But you want to come to a point where you feel like, yeah, I'm somewhere grounded, if you want to say so. I have my spot in which I feel good. And this spot, everybody is looking for in various ways to get there, right? Now, on this search to get to that spot where you feel content on all the different levels, we have so many obstacles that hinder us from experiencing that. For example, you might feel very content in your relationship, but your body aches. Or you might be very content in your body, but your mind drives you crazy. Or you have a handle on all of those kind of things, but your emotions are all over the place, right? So for me to get to that point where you can say, on all those different levels of me, I feel content, we have to work on all those different levels. And some of them are just easier to access than others. So if you want spiritual contentment or spiritual upliftment, for me, I think you have to start with your physical body. You have to work on that. So once you make your physical body content, the body is not firing signals to your brain the entire time that something is wrong, right? So you're already taking one part of discontentment out of your equation. And like that, step by step, you work through all the different levels and you exclude as many obstacles or as many triggers that fire discontentment out of your equation as possible. And that is something that you can just learn to do. And that by that, slowly you get to the point where you feel like, okay, the body is okay. My emotions are okay. My mind is kind of I can handle it a little bit. Yeah, I have enough focus. What do I have then? What is left? And then you come to the core point for spiritual progress that you can really work on. But before you eliminated all those other obstacles, it will be really difficult to come to that point because they all kind of sound similar. Yeah, may I give you an example for that?
Yeah.
Sure.
This is good.
Love it.
Every day, like clockwork, around 4 o'clock, I start getting angry. Every single day. I can set my clock to it. And then my anger rises more and more and more until about 7, 8 o'clock. And then it hits the highest point, and then after that, I'm just shot. I'm not good. And for the longest time in my life, I just thought I have anger issues. And everybody told me you have anger issues. Because it expresses like anger to the outer world. And at some point, I just realized I'm not angry, I'm just hungry. So my body is firing up. My body is firing up and sends me messages like, dude, feed me, right? We need sustenance, give me something. And it shows in my expression and in my mind the same way like a real anger issue would come up. Same feeling, right? So by me learning about that and figuring that out, now I can eat at 3:30 and I never get angry at 4. Right? I eliminated one source of emotions in me. And because that emotion is the same as if I really get angry about something, it is hard to distinguish from each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So they all come together in your mind, make this great big mush in your mind, and you have to live with that. For me, the way is to start pulling things out and making sure the body is content so it doesn't fire up, then I can deal with the next thing, like whatever is my emotional level content or whatever. Do I have enough space and all these kind of things? And the more I eliminate those sources of thoughts and emotions, the more I eliminate them, the less I have to deal with them in my mush of brain. Yeah? And then slowly you come to the point, I unraveled that. And now I come to the point where I can experience what is my mind really like. Before that, I had no idea of how to deal with that. And now I come to the point where I can say, this is what I have to deal with at this time. This is my mind. And now you can start working on that.
So first of all, it's so obvious how you think in a structured, ordered, step-by-step, scientific, reproducible, everything that you said is directly inside observation, experimentation, adaptation, discovery model of working, right? So, and I mean, frankly, that's, when, oh God, I was just watching this guy talk about the splitting of a photon, when the first time they split a photon and they separated the photons but they were still connected. That the thing one of them did, the other one did, as if they were still one. Right. And it's a scientific validation of a woo-woo concept that we're all connected. And, indigenous people live in the world where there is no separation between us and the universe. We are the universe. We are the earth. That's a fairly prevalent indigenous conversation that from the Western perspective is woo-woo. That's like, what do you mean we're all connected? That's not observable. And I think that's where the distinction comes in. Is it observable, repeatable, trackable for you? This is where it is for you, Marcel. My hearing of where you are with it. And if you can track it, see it, measure it, reproduce it, then it ceases to have those qualities of woo-woo. It becomes science. And then when they did that with the photon, it was like, okay, well, it's the same thing with the what is that? The slit experiment, where I know just enough of this to be dangerous, to get myself in trouble, but someone who knows about it, right? But like, things behave differently when they're observed. Atoms behave differently when they're observed than when they're not observed, which makes no sense, except that's the way this works. And so, to bring, we got into this conversation because you were talking about building on what works as an access to creating contentment. And Chris brought up Esther Hicks and Abraham, who is, if you don't, do you know who Esther Hicks is? Okay. So Esther Hicks is a woman from Texas. This is a little old lady from Texas, sweetest woman, who channels a collective of beings called Abraham, source energy. She channels them. And that's pretty out on the woo-woo side, right? I mean, I don't think we're arguing for that. That's somehow going to be measurable, right? That is at this current time measuring someone's ability to channel entities from other dimensions. We do not have the qualifications to measure this. So we're going to leave that on the woo-woo side. And no arguments about it. And she speaks to the law of attraction. She speaks about the law of attraction, or they speak about the law of attraction, like you and I could argue or discuss gravity. For her, it's literally not law of gravity, law of entropy, law of, physical laws of the universe. Law of attraction is in exactly like that in her world. For her and them, it is in fact the way things work. And I love her. I love her work. I love what she does. I listen to her, clips of her when I'm in the shower. I just find it to be very, as someone who's clinically cynical, I've really yet to hear something from her that I thought sounded like bullshit.
Mhm.
And I think I have a decent bullshit detector around woo-woo stuff. I'm like, yeah, but everything she says makes sense.
Mm.
And I have a little trouble with getting my head around how they talk about famine or global disasters or the Holocaust and like that from a law of attraction perspective, although I've caught glimpses of what they're speaking to about it. But I don't find that, see, that's an interesting thing too, actually, Marcel, is I don't find that I demand of myself that everything is, that I need to understand all of it.
Right.
I believe any of it.
For me, that is just one of the things that I find that most people get stuck on at some point when it comes to yourself.
Is
right?
what?
With that you don't need to understand everything. That's something where I disagree. I agree when you say like, I can accept that we have the law of gravity, but do I understand how it works? No. Right? I accept what Newton said at some point, and I accept what Einstein put on top of that and whatever, like bending the space. I can say, sure, but do I understand that? Come on, not really, right? We accept it. But when it comes to myself, I think that's a whole different story. Because I do not want to be dependent on something else for me to reach
Yeah.
contentment. Yeah. And for that, you said something earlier, which I found very, very important, is something that we cannot measure yet. Right. And that is the thing that for us, with ourselves, I think we have to understand. Just because at this moment I cannot measure it yet, that doesn't mean that I'll never be able to. Now, for example, if you ever did a yoga posture in your life, you will not know automatically which muscles are involved, right? You
Mhm.
do it, and somehow you struggle with the posture, somewhere it hurts, and then you think you're doing it right. Which muscles are involved, you don't know. That is something that takes effort, that takes observation, that takes patience and repetition. And by doing that, your tools are getting better. Your tools of observation for yourself. And by that, step by step, the I cannot know that yet changes into, yeah, I have a pretty good grasp of how that works. And that we can do for all the different levels of our personality. In the beginning, they might be on the woo-woo side. You mentioned acupuncture earlier. In yoga, we call the flow of energy prana. In the beginning, that's a woo-woo system. Step by step, by fine-tuning your perception, you can say, no, it's actually a reality for me. So I can
Yes.
deal with it. And I think that is, for me, that's one of the most important things, to learn how to use your tools and use them properly. So you can actually say, I'm not dependent. I can understand how it works. And by that, I can influence it.
Good. And by so 100, I'm 100% agree with you about there. I don't need to understand everything about every theory to be able to use the part I do understand.
Mhm.
But the inquiry into how I see life and how I operate in life and what is, germane to my agency, I'm 100% with you that that's all where there is to stand with it is I'm going to discover it.
Mhm.
And so I'm 100% with you on that. Chris, look like you had something to say. Or maybe not.
I think I was just I think I was just processing. I'm appreciating the, we talk about the balancing between mindfulness and CEO, that this is a paradoxical conversation we're having, because CEO conjures such a hustle, do, produce, and maybe more systematic approach to something, whereas the mindfulness side of things tends to be a little bit more undefined, and I just feel like Marcel's doing such a great job of blending these worlds. It's easy to listen to you, Marcel, talk about the way you're talking about it, because it helps my CEO mind that wants to measure things, wants to observe things, to go, okay, this is something I can have agency with, I can have control over. I can tell when I'm hungry, and I can tell, like, you're just putting it in a framework that feels like, okay, well, this is doable. We could do something with this.
Great. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't get that. I think in woo-woo conversations where things are not defined, it's sometimes harder for the pragmatic person to be like, I don't really know how to relate to this conversation, because you're basically telling me to sit in lotus pose and hope something happens for me. I don't know. I can't make a projection on that. I
Mm.
can't build out my next 12 months projections on how I'm feeling.
Mm. Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. For me personally, I don't see a problem between the two words of mindful and CEO at all. And I think the way our society projects it, you're absolutely right. That CEO is this like, you have to be constantly exhausting yourself, right? You have to
Right.
like fire and produce, and you have to show wins and whatever. And I don't see that there's anything wrong with that, because if you run a business, that's what you need to do, right? You have to make sure that the business creates profit so everybody can be happy. For me, the thing is just, if I want to do that, looking at my system, you have to find the source from which you power that. Yeah, what is my motivation to power that? Where do I get the energy to do that? And depending on where you get the energy from, then you can have either the typical Western CEO who is like teetering on the brink of burnout constantly, or you can have somebody that says the motivation comes from a different source because I found what is my drive. And then you can do all those kind of things without ever burning out.
Mm.
Like for me, for example, I don't have a very high demand for my personal life. Yeah. I need this and this and this. I'm content quite easily. Still, I work a lot because I want to make a lot of money, of course, like everybody else does. But now if I fire it from the idea, I want to make a lot of money so I can drive an S-Class Mercedes, that would burn me out. And then when I found the source that really motivates me, which is I want to make sure that I can provide for my kids when they grow up, when they have their families. Now suddenly that's a desire that comes from me that is sustainable. Yeah? That is not something that's like, it's more like a tsunami, if you want to say so. And now my work ethics is powered by my desire to provide for my kids for a couple of generations, and not by it needs to be something quick and whatever, you know? So my energy that flows into that doesn't feel like, it feels more like, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by that, I can have the same output without burning myself out. So for me, these time to both things, mindful or attentive and paying attention to where you work from and whatnot, and CEO, I think they should be together for everybody.
Right. Well, that's really why we're here. Yeah.
Yep.
It's and why you're here, why when you and I were speaking, I thought, all right, well, you're the perfect person to be speaking to this, because that's, I mean, I deal with this with mindfulness coaching all the time is, is it woo-woo? Is mindfulness, is meditation woo-woo? Or is there, is 2,500 years of history with it? There's science about what the way it impacts your actual gray matter growth in the areas. And there's just no, it's not the same conversation you have about yoga and about your systematic contentment I have for mindfulness is as scientifically demonstrably effective as anything else you could do, as but in 1960, if you were running down the street, someone would ask, who's chasing you? There was no one running for health. That wasn't a thing, right? You didn't do that. People go to the gym now, and yoga classes have become mainstream. I mean, yoga is an acceptable, very common, very ordinary at this point way for, as you pointed out pre-show, for middle-aged white women to, get their, exercise on. It's a completely, so I think as we, and that's a big part of what we're doing here on the show, frankly, is to mainstreams, to break the back, slay the dragon of hustle culture, break the back of that thing so that there's a holistic view. You were speaking about what comes from your heart as to your motivation, and there's another conversation over here from Simon Sinek called, know your why, or the infinite game, or we're all pointing in the same direction, right? Or different paths all leading to the same place, which is a holistic view of what it takes to be fulfilled, satisfied, and successful. the more fulfilled you are, the more successful you are. There's science behind that too. It's not just happier people are happy. No, happier people are more fucking effective.
Absolutely.
You know? So yeah, that's awesome. And I really, like Chris said, I really appreciate the rigor that you demonstrate in your thinking about it, because it's very obvious that you are what you preach. You are that. So that's fabulous. Yeah, you know, the other when we got into this thing about woo-woo back at the beginning of the show. Oh, and Chris was, I was actually going through who Abraham is in the Law of Attraction. And you know, your methodology of starting with what works and focusing on what works and building what works as so that it will naturally begin to expand and push out the unworkability. It's just another is a very law of attraction way of looking at life. That's the way, that's what you have discovered for yourself as a principle, as an operating principle. Someone who was studying the law of attraction would look at it and go, yeah, obviously that's the way it works, is that you don't, if you focus on what's not working, you're going to have a problem. You're going to build that up. You're going to create resistance. You're going to create solutions, which just add mass to it. No, the appropriate way to act is, what do you love? And let's see what we need to do to build on that. And then what doesn't work, I will show up as, oh, that's in the way. We can just take that out, put that over here.
And if I may intersect here, it's not just that it pushes something out of the way, but once we change our perspective, the things that seem like an obstacle or something bad actually change their proposition and suddenly become something very necessary for you to achieve contentment. Yeah, I always like to compare that to you're looking at a beautiful picture. Yeah, but you don't look at it with your eyes, you look at it through a camera. And the camera has an amazing zoom, right? And one of my favorite paintings is by Claude Monet. Do you know Monet? The bridge over the Japanese pond or whatever that is called. Beautiful picture. Now imagine you're standing 6 feet away, you hold a camera with an amazing zoom, and you look at one of the parts where you used black for painting, and you zoom in on that spot. All you're going to see is black, right? And this is what we consider being problems in our mind. This is a characteristics in me that I don't like. I'm a really bad person or whatever. And that fills your entire perception at that moment. That's all you can see, right? Now you can start working on turning that black into something else. Or what I like to do is say, instead of we spoke about that earlier, and getting lost in that thought, you can leave that thought as it is and just zoom out. And the more you zoom out, the more you can see this is not an ugly spot. Yeah, Monet put that there for a reason. Other than that, that picture doesn't have a depth perception. It doesn't have shadow. It doesn't make the other colors pop if you don't have the black spots, right? And you don't change anything. You don't change the picture. You don't change your point of view. All you're changing is the width of how much you perceive by zooming out. And by that, when you speak about being lost in your thoughts, we can do the same thing. When you have something that really drives you crazy and you can't stop thinking about it, don't try to subdue that. Don't try to put it away. Just zoom out, right? Step back. And then suddenly you will see, oh, wow, those thoughts or those characteristics, they're not really bad. I focus on something else for a moment, so I get distracted from my earlier thought. And because I focus on that, I make that big and strong and whatever. And then I can turn around again and look at that earlier spot and see, like, it's actually pretty good there. I like it there. I leave it alone. And by that, we save so much work. Yeah, I think a lot of people in the West, we deal with the problems and we focus on them so much. And by that, like you said earlier, we make them bigger, make them stronger, give them weight, instead of leaving the problem alone, stepping back. And then once you feel in a spot where you feel good, you can look back at it and then reanalyze. Is that really a problem, or is that a good thing that I can use?
It's great.
Interesting that I was just thinking, when I listened to an Abraham clip, where the format she often uses, she'll have a group and they'll ask questions. That's the format. And then they will respond to the question. And it's almost always that the question is generated from a problem. It's generated from, I don't understand this. This isn't working well in my relationship. This isn't working well in my money. And so there is this, this is the marketer in me that just has spent, a lot of time around, problems, pain, madness, misery. Like I feel like there's a role or a place for getting honest about what's not working, getting honest about the things that are problems. But as you're describing it, I mean, I'm hearing it's like, yeah, maybe my experience of the thing with that black spot on the painting right now is a problem for me. And if I zoom out, I can get some perspective, and it's no longer a problem for me.
Right. Because
I'm
you're
just trying to reconcile those. Yeah.
You're disengaging certain things from your mind from that spot. Yeah. If you zoom in too much, all your emotions, your experiences that you had prior to this moment and whatever, everything comes and bundles on that one spot. And that clouds your judgment very clearly. Instead, when you zoom out and you come to a spot where you feel like, hey, I'm content with myself, then it might still be something that you don't like, but the way you react to it or you act upon that, what you're seeing will be different, right?
That's the top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. If we're talking like someone's pain aware, I'm aware that I have a toothache. I don't know what the problem is, so I'm not problem aware. I don't know what's causing the pain in my toothache until I get problem aware. And now I have a cavity. And then from there, right, it's solution aware. We're moving down into like, what would be the solution? And I feel like systematic contentment, for example, starts to be one of a way to begin to figure out a solution to the thing that is causing you to not be content. But there's a place to meet people in the pain, but we don't need to build around it or stay there, is maybe what I'm.
From a marketing perspective, that's great. I mean, because we start with pain. Somewhere we start with pain aware, right? That's
the currency exchange that we've talked about, Aaron. Like, I'm willing to give you money for you to alleviate the pain that I'm experiencing in my tooth or my whatever the pain is. But the real wisdom here is, and what's that word with a guru? It's transference. Like, someone is thinking, I need you, the guru, until the guru says, you don't need me. You've had yourself the whole time. But they didn't come to you that way. They came to you as a guru saying, like, teach me, teacher. And then you had to sort of walk them through a spot where they got to see that they didn't actually need you. It's transferring them back to their own power, or maybe in your case, Marcel, transferring back to their own contentment.
Yeah, I think it's both, right? The contentment and the power come from the same spot, I would say, from my experience. And if you speak about currency or like the hook, how you can get people in, for me, it is both. It is one, the pain, absolutely. Yeah. There are lots of people out there who are experiencing what I like to call the void. Yeah, you have that spot in you where just nothing gets and nothing ever makes it good, right? And that is a strong motivation for people to start searching for something that actually might fill that void. And it's a good motivation. But if you follow that motivation, the path just sucks, pardon my French there. Because all you do is
I got a real fucking problem with you saying sucks.
Yeah, it is constantly fueled by pain, right? So you have to focus on the pain all the time to keep on going. And that's a valid approach, don't get me wrong. It will get you to the results that you want. But I think there's a better approach, and that is the one where you focus on the things that make you go, right? I understand there's a pain spot, and I don't try to neglect that or whatever. I'm just choosing a different path to fill that. And for me, that path is just by, like I said, getting the things that really fire you up. The things that you really feel like, I can do this, and if I do more of that, I'm getting more contentment. And if I get more contentment, slowly but surely, that void will be filled. Yeah, so then you follow the path of wow instead of the path of ow. That's a big difference.
Ooh, look at you.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
The science. That's excellent.
Path
Path of wow, not the path of ow. Yeah, that thing about focus, Marcel, that you shared with the Zoom is, you know, we've talked about that before. It's, and I know that this is how it's a yoga practice. It's, you know, the world of mindfulness and yoga and meditation are all connected. You know, the opportunity to just be without judgment, any of it, you know, to detach, and then to, you know, I was just sharing this yesterday on one of my calls was, you know, it's like, yeah, and I use the cameras. Like if you have something that's in focus, it's not like the other stuff goes away. It's just that stuff's just not what you're focusing on. You don't have to disappear. You don't have to get rid of any of it. You're just focusing on, and in this case, what you're talking about is you're focusing on what you want to have and what you already do have and what's working. And the more you have that, and the other stuff is there, it's just not what you're focusing on, and you don't have to do anything with it. So I hear and that you have that's the conversation that people get in with you is just really inspiring. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like the same if you want to project that like on a business, for example. Yeah, I've been self-employed my entire life and run all kinds of businesses and whatever. And we all know the struggle to think of how do I keep my business alive for as long as possible, right? And I've fallen into that trap a million times of trying to reinvent the wheel anew, and trying to have new products and trying to have new things that I can offer to my customers. Instead, at some point, I just realized, you know what? This whole rinse and repeat thing really works best. Yeah, you see what works best, yeah, and what people relate to, and you just do more of it. And that for me always worked best for my business. And then at some point, I just started thinking, why should I not do that for my personal experiences, right? Instead of trying to do something new all the time, find the things that really work well for me and just do more of it. And by that, my life just gets better and better.
Systematic contentment.
Right. Niching down to what works. That's my niche.
Yeah.
It's what works in my life.
Absolutely.
I'm a niche master. Oh, it's excellent, Marcel. I appreciate that. I love this conversation. It's great. Well, Marcel, if people want to find out more about you and how to get in touch with you and how to work with you, where do they do that?
The best way right now is probably through my website for the coaching, which is A*-coaching. So ASTAR, then hyphen or minus, and coaching.com.
Right.
And there you can download a little book that I wrote about 12 simple things you can do to make your life better. And you find that under the free consultation part, and you can just click on the download ebook thing. These are some very simple things that you can do, just like, see, you don't have to do 12 of them, just do one. That's the best thing to do. And just do one of them and do it well, and you already see the big effects that it will have on your life. Right?
Awesome.
Very
All right,
easy.
well, we'll put those links in the chat. Yeah. I mean, in the show notes.
In the show notes. Yeah. Yep. It's good. Awesome. Marcel, thanks for being here. Aaron, thanks for hosting like you do. Thanks for bringing the heat, bringing the love, and we'll catch y'all next time. See ya.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.